Welcome back. Canada has big plans to increase its pool of immigrants in the years ahead. Well, here's a look at where things stand now by the numbers. In 2021, immigrants made up a record 23% of Canada's population, surpassing the previous high water mark of 22% set in 1921. That proportion is only expected to rise. StatsCan predicts immigrants will make up 29 to 34% of our population by 2041. Our labor force needs and aging population make new Canadians especially good for the economy. Around 80% of the growth in our labor force between 2016 and 21 came from immigration. More than half of the immigrants admitted in that economic category. Of those 748,120 people, 34.5% came through a skilled worker program, another 33.6% through a provincial nominee program specifically aimed at filling labor shortages. And the vast majority of immigrants speak either English or French, or 92.7% of them. Well, even the ambitious immigration targets set by the federal government can't fill the number of unfilled jobs in Canada. And as any new Canadian will tell you, matching foreign credentials to a Canadian job can be difficult. So what's the best way to make sure we have the labor force we need for now and for the future? Pedro Barata is the Executive Director of the Future Skills Centre. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure to be here, Amanda.
So we hear these big targets. We are, of course, a country of immigrants. So it's easy to kind of focus on the positive side of that story and think we're going to fill the jobs. It's going to be good for the economy. But when new Canadians are landed here, they don't actually always find it that easy to fit their skills and credentials to the work available. How do we fill those gaps? How hard is that?
Well, I think we've had a credential-based immigration point system that we've relied on for a very long time. We have, of course, worked around some of the limitations of the credential system by looking, for example, at provincial nominee programs and some of the sectors of our economy that have the greatest skills needs. But the solution is clearly that we look at skills more and more in terms of our selection criteria. And we recognize that in our economy, moving jobs, changing careers is going to be the new normal. And so it's not so much what degree you have, it's whether you have the core skills that we're going to need for the future across industries around basic digital literacy or advanced digital literacy, cognitive skills like problem solving and creativity, and also social and emotional skills around adaptability and resilience. So let's start picking newcomers to Canada based on the skills we're going to need and use credentials as a continuing test, but not the most important criteria for filling labor market demand.
So some, of course, we might be able to identify have those skills already, but because those are skills that are often not measured or even valued, Pedro, how do we make sure we understand what skills somebody possesses, and if they don't have them, how do they get them?
Well, we need to introduce those kinds of diagnostics and instruments into our selection criteria. Right now, we ask all kinds of questions in terms of newcomers. We ask about language, we ask what degrees do you have, we ask about how much money you have in the bank. We can easily start to introduce, and we can start by piloting that approach, questions that deal with what employers actually say they need. And employers are increasingly saying that to meet labor market demands, they can do the training themselves on the technical side, that what they need are people who can solve problems, can work in teams, can be resilient, and also have basic digital literacy. Those are all things that we can measure for, and those should be almost a table stakes for our point system coming into Canada.
We obviously have a bunch of Canadians that could also benefit from acquiring these skills. Do we have the resources to focus on that group of that part of the labor force, which might be able to either upskill, get a better job, or return to the labor force, or if their job is made redundant, actually have a future?
Absolutely, and this is going to be increasingly the reality for all Canadians, be they graduates, young or old graduates from post-secondary education, or mid-career workers who are going to be going through changes because of technology or because of our sustainability targets, or even older workers who may not want to retire and who may want to look for different contributions that they can make. And what we're missing are enough approaches to help people with career guidance, with career advice, and to help people understand not only what skills they already bring to the table, but what's the career journey they want to go on, not just tomorrow, but in their lives, and what are some of the training and skills that they need to develop. We don't have enough of that in Canada. And if we recognize that we are going to be changing, our paths are going to be changing more and more, we're going to need those supports to be table stakes in terms of our future labor market and future economic growth.
So good to have you, Pedro. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Amanda. Good to see you.
Pedro Barata is Executive Director at the Future Skills Center. Well, there's no doubt that newcomers can help solve problems in labor markets and demographics, but is enough attention being paid to the support needed to make their arrival a success? Kareem El-Assal is Managing Editor of CIC News. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Amanda. It's great to be here.
So we are looking at big numbers, big targets in the future, but big numbers already. Let's start right there. Is the support there? Housing, qualifications for jobs, immediate support around healthcare and schools. Are we doing what we need to do?
Yeah, so the numbers are very ambitious, Amanda. However, at the same time, Canada does have a proven track record of welcoming successfully high levels of immigrants and integrating them into our economy and society. There will be some growing pains, but we have a proven track record in terms of facilitating successful integration.
What's at the top of your list if you had to say, you know, this jumps out? Many would suggest housing, Kareem, because we know we have a housing supply shortage already. And if we add 400,000 new Canadians a year, that's just going to make that worse. Is that someplace we should be looking to try to solve a problem before it emerges?
Well, it's been a long-standing problem, and unfortunately, we have a situation in Canada where the left hand hasn't spoken to the right for several decades now. We've made a concerted effort since the late 1980s to welcome high levels of immigration, but we haven't taken the steps necessary to address our housing supply issues. Nonetheless, this is something that we will need to adapt to, and we should be able to adapt to moving forward, knowing now that we are absolutely going to have to adapt with us welcoming 500,000 immigrants per year. Yeah,
there'll be pressure on an old place as well, and that is on getting the credentials to immigrants for the jobs. We have all met people with very high credentials doing jobs that they're overqualified for in this country. Is that getting better? Have you seen change on that front?
Yeah, there's been significant improvement, and actually the improvement began prior to the pandemic itself. With Canada experiencing labor shortages prior to the pandemic, immigrants were benefiting, and we're seeing the benefit continue now that labor shortages, are persisting. What's also important to keep in mind is Canada has made significant policy changes which have improved the labor force outcomes of immigrants in recent years, and this is something we should continue to expect moving forward.
So we've only got seconds here, Kareem, but these are big numbers, but overall you sound pretty optimistic that we can manage to provide the support required.
Yeah, Canada arguably is the best in the world in terms of welcoming high levels of immigrants and integrating them. That's not to say that it's easy and it's going to be smooth sailing, but we should feel confident about our abilities. So
good to have you, Kareem. Appreciate your time.
Have a great day. Thank you, Amanda.
Kareem El-Assal is Managing Editor at CIC News. Coming up, the risk of cyber attacks is high in Canada. Are businesses and their employees taking it seriously enough? But first, this. After a whole lot of pushback from clients, Airbnb is changing the transparency around certain charges. Cleaning fees were a particular thorn in travelers' sides, along with some requirements by hosts to actually clean themselves, something Airbnb says may have got out of hand. The new rules are designed to let travelers know the entire cost of a stay up front with no surprises and no chores at the end of the holiday. We're back after this.